Okay, so I'm here with Antoine Riard and my new guest surprise co-host, Vortex, from the previous episode. Antoine, the listeners they're not very familiar with Bitcoin core contributors or you. You're a dev, but what kind of dev?
That's a good question. I would say usually there are people that are in the background doing the real work, and sometimes most of the time very happy when people don't hear about what they're doing, are not specifically on the spotlight. We're not very specifically to be under the spotlight, and that means everything works well when people don't have to hear about me. Usually people are going to hear about me where we fuck up things, and there is someone to go on the front line and tell things and explain very technical topics. Most of the time it's going to be like security stuff related to second layers. That's where I spend most of my energy and work in the last years. Also like a bunch about consensus change, governance, and bunch also there are some huge refactorings which are always ongoing in Bitcoin Core, and I've put my hands also a bit dirty on that. But they are not the sexy stuff that people are going to hear about it. When you're working on thousands lines of code of C++ change in Bitcoin Core, for example, changing the lock order in the wallet of Bitcoin Core compared to the nodes, untie it from the nodes. It's very unsexy. It's very time consuming. You can fuck up things in the sense of you can fuck up the way people are going to see their transactions confirmed in the Bitcoin Core wallet, and yet it works happening in Bitcoin Core. Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Still a bit of Lightning. Still bit of the boundary of Lightning and Bitcoin. And I've also spent a lot of time on the last month playing with libbitcoinkernal, because now thanks to the work of many people, finally we start to have the Bitcoin consensus engine out of Bitcoin Core, and I think that's not the kind of things which is making the headlight, or that people are going to talk about on the main media, but I think it's one of the most interesting things happening in Bitcoin right now.
Can you explain this more? Because I'm still wrapping my head around the architecture of Bitcoin Core, the client. And you say we're taking the consensus stuff out of Bitcoin Core. What does that mean? Maybe at a high level, and what does it mean at an actual technical level?
Okay. At the high level is, historically, so we had Satoshi in 2009, he launched, it wasn't even Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin D. It was just a Windows binary, and it was Bitcoin. And, with time, people have added functionalities, they had features, but base has grown. Some people have tried to implement the protocol. So starting first with Amir Taki and Bitcoin, and then we have BTCD, we have clients in Ruby, clients in other C++, ways, Haskell. People are trying to implement the protocol to have their own clients. But we do talk about the consensus engine. That means you do have to implement bug for bugs. There is one famous bug in consensus rules, which is the null dummy for check multisigs, where Satoshi is just crap. We have often this image about, Satoshi was a genius, Satoshi was awesome, Satoshi has planned everything. In reality, when you work on the codes, he screwed things, for sure. There are a lot of small things. He got right the main things, but in practice, there were also sometimes bugs. So the new dummy for check messaging is one of them, in the sense of you have to add an element in your in the input stack to redeem a multisig, and that's sort of nothings, and it just bugs. But that means today, if I want to rewrite my consensus engine in C or Go or Rust, I will have to implement this bug. And if I fail it, and it got triggered, if that code pass got triggered, I might be split out of the network. And yeah, it turns out like last year, BTCD had consensus bugs, and BTCD is one of the most, I would say, full node implementation, which had real world usage, like in sense of people are using it as a backend for Lindy.
I use it to run my ORD node. So
yeah, I mean it's one of the most mature full node. It's not, I would say, yeah, Bitcoin Core also is shit, but BTCD is yeah, it's one of the most mature full node implementation. It has its own problems, own bugs, but so why the Bitcoin kernel is important and significant is now we are getting like this main part, like all the consensus rules and what defines Bitcoins. You know, when people go on the public stage and they say, yeah, Bitcoin go to the moon, numbers goes up, and at the end of the day, it's consensus rules, which is fine. What are your Bitcoin? Why we have only like 21 million Bitcoin? Why is subsidy schedule? Why are like the number of units? Like what define the transactions with the unlock times, the inversions, fields, all that kind of things. It's all part of the consensus rules. And now we're getting this out of the bigger Bitcoin D binary, because when we talk about Bitcoin D, there is a GUI, there is a wallet, there is a UTXO cache, there is a transaction relay stack, there is a block network stack. What else? We do have the mempool, like the infamous mempool. So yeah, it's a complex piece of system engineering, but with time is like, we have written the wallet in some way. The block sync stack has been written in some way. The UTXO cache has been written in some way, but it doesn't mean like we could have other ways of being done more efficiently or more robustly or with better API. People are spending their time to complain to their RPC API, and it's true. But now, like with the consensus engine out, that means people are going to be able to write different Bitcoin software. And that's, for me, it's exciting. And that's one of the most interesting things in Bitcoin. I don't know.
When you say write different Bitcoin software,
that means people not rewriting Bitcoin Core from scratch, or not having to use Bitcoin Core anymore, because what is the most valuable things in Bitcoin Core is the consensus engine. People are not going I don't know if I should say that on podcast, but
you can say anything on this.
Almost.
I'll let you know if you can't say something. Yeah.
I worked on Bitcoin Core for years. I never opened the GUI. I don't give a fuck about the GUI. I apologize. I know there is a lot of people who like the GUI, but I'm a Unix command line guy. I don't want to use the GUI, and I never use it. But still, we do have those 1,000 lines of code in Bitcoin Core right now, which is all the GUI. It's a huge maintenance cost. It's a sense of, it's people every time you have to upgrade, you have to be sure also that the Qt code is upgraded with that. It's somehow from if you zoom out and if you don't only take the developer perspective, it's important to have your GUI, or it's important to have well-used interface, because some people are willing to run a Bitcoin full node, are willing to be part of the network of thousands of nodes all over the world, but they might not be Unix geek, they might not be Linux kind of people. And having a GUI for them, it's very valuable. From the perspective of a developer, it's maintenance work that everyone will not to have to do. Same with the RPC. I a
hear a lot of devs be like, well, we got to get rid of deprecate the RPC.
There is good reasons. Stability matters. When you're building API and when you're building API, stability matters in the sense of you have Exchange building their stuff on top of it. You do have wallets building their stuff on top of it. You do have second layers like Lightning building their stuff on top of the API. So stability matters. But same, you have people an Exchange, we don't want to have RPC like with that outcomes to have like, I don't know, like more fine-grained fee estimation results. And other people are always saying, no, like it might be like, it might be should garnish, or like the users might do something wrong. And you have a lot of conversations in Bitcoin Core where you have good points on both sides. And best is like not having like to decide for everyone. And right now we do have like this very monolithic software where everyone has to agree on everything. And yeah, that's why libbitcoinkernal is very interesting.
One common topic I have on this podcast is soft forks, discussing consensus. It's a difficult and challenging topic, even for me, because I think and talk about it a lot, but it's still like, I'm still wrapping my head around so many of the dimensions here. Does separating consensus out of Bitcoin Core, do you think that makes the art of developing consensus for different things better, healthier? Do you think it changes anything at all? Or
it will change the game.
How so?
From radically, like a sense of, I think it's going to take times for people like to build like new node implementations on top of Bitcoin kernels, but finally it's going to move away from like, I do have experience with Bitcoin Core, but I've also worked a lot on Lightnings, and I'm used to the development dynamics of Lightnings, where we do have multiple implementations. We do have Core Lightning, we do have LND, we do have Rust Lightning, we do have Async. Yeah. So we have 4 or 5 main implementations, and the fact that it always been like people like trying to exchange their viewpoints based on the spec, and I think that kind of rational debate in Lightning. Even if Lightning is super complex and that, everything takes times, but we don't have this in Bitcoin Core right now because it's based more on like people don't want to make any change because any change might have a huge impact. So like there is no like this trial and error kind of process that you can see on Lightning, because on Lightning it's often like, a clear and async team. They're going to try some things, try it for 6 months on their sites, try to with a subset of the networks, and if it works well, they're going to bring it back to the spec, or like, can we have this standardized among all implementations? Sometimes it might be LND and Lightning Labs trying some things, but you do have this iterative process. Like in Bitcoin Core, no.
That's what's beautiful about Lightning is that it's a different set of consensus rules almost.
Yeah.
And so because of this, you can have a lot more experimentation, do a lot more interesting things, and there's a lot more wins left to go, like I mentioned on the podcast that I did. But it's just fascinating to see that the experimentation continue with the amount of different implementations, because some implementations have some features that others don't, and it's almost like they can compete.
Yep.
And so it does cause some interesting bugs where if somebody puts a bug out, all the other implementations are going to suffer that same bug, unfortunately. But so they do try to collaborate and work together. But some of that stuff is really interesting. And you're saying that the project you're working on takes the consensus rules out of.
To be clear, like I'm not the main one who I've worked on. Many people who have worked on have been Carl Dong and the Charlatan. A lot of like Bitcoin Core Contributor have like spend time reviewing it, but it's a collective effort of all the Bitcoin Core people. So no, I'm really not the main, but that's one of the projects, or like that's what technically excites me the most right now. So back to consensus is like consensus. Everyone has to run the same rules. On Lightning, we still have like channel types, in the sense of you might deploy your own channel types, and it might not be like compatible with other implementations, but you can experiment with it. Consensus, it's all or nothing things. But the thing is, like in the future, if we have like different full node implementations, that means you have also like different teams, and like you can have people learning, what beacon hacking is, and you can learn about consensus by working on consensus change, but most of the time also like working on block download or working on the mempool or working on transaction relays, which are like very critical.
And what's funny is because I talk to people who want to like change Bitcoin, who have a soft fork. I like many of these ideas, and the criticism is like, well, like like core contributors and course focus is like it's productive towards niche towards things which improve core, but like they're again broadly not in a position to like it's just very difficult to talk about consensus changes because we have people focusing on say cluster mempool or V3 transactions, which are
package
these are things that I can kind of barely understand. They're also not very good podcast topics. Like that's it's a Bitcoin OpTech. Like
so back to the panel you were doing earlier this day, and people are doing like working on software can be like very kind of political. I don't like to use the word political in Bitcoin because it's ill-defined and like, but it's really like people can be like there's
a lot of conflict.
Yeah, it's conflictual by nature. And if consensus change wouldn't be conflictual by nature, Bitcoin would be easy to change. And that means like we wouldn't value Bitcoin the same. So the fact that Bitcoin is hard to change and that you do have to push or like put a lot of energy, it's part of the game, and that's a property we should all care about. No, it's like I think it's like, you know, if you're Bitcoin core contributors and let's say you do have the technical talents and the will to put the work, it's going to be at some point very easy to attract funding, go on podcasts, get some kind of notoriety. If you only work on Bitcoin core refactors, on work on the mempool, or work on some other things, consensus change is like controversial by nature. So you're not going to make friends, or like you're going to lose friends, or like, you know, it's a fight, and like a sense of if you optimize, if you're rational Bitcoin core contributors, and if you optimize for your careers, don't go to work on consensus change. That might not be a popular truth, but that I do think that's my perspective of the reality. Like, so yeah, that's why like most of the time people don't work on consensus change.
You, part of my limited prep for this conversation was trying to find interesting comments on the mailing list.
Yeah.
And you had one, I think, last fall, maybe September, talking. I forget you might remember the context, but
Transaction relay.
No, it was actually, I think, on just. I think it was like something to do with Softworks, and and you had and you talk about the difficulty in changing consensus, and this reminded me of a particular section in this comment or this post you had on the mailing list, which is where you talk about during the Taproot era, the Taproot activation era, and CTV, and then trying to discuss CTV in the mainly in the core contributor world, and I think you said something like you were holding IRC meetings to try to figure out where developers where they agree and where they disagree.
I think Jeremy would have done that, but yeah, I've been part of the process on Taproot.
Okay,
reviewing the diff. I've been first-hand witness of all the CTV trial activation back in 2022. Like for me, is like it's there is like we, in my opinions, we have felt. So after the CTV failed attempts, there were like multiple initiatives to try to like, you know, how we could build a better culture on how we craft software in this space. And there were like few initiatives. One was Bitcoin Inquisitions by AG Towns, trying to have like a test bed of software. And it is valuable in the sense of, you know, to have a stable branch where only software are poor and you can try with it. You can try it on like test. Or test, like it's some kind of signet. You can have like these conversations among experts about like how do we understand the software change? What are the secondary effects? What might are the unintended effects? Second one, yeah.
Because I think CTV is on Inquisition and MutinyNet, I believe, as well.
Yep.
Yep. Just to double
Yeah. There is CTV, there is check Sig from Stack, any private also. Yeah. So there is a set of people who are like doing like this maintenance work on Bitcoin acquisitions to have like this test bed among experts. So initiative I try also something I did for 6 months a year is to have like regular IRC meetings, open to all, and to have like experts, like, because you do have this, you do have two, I would say, cultural problems. You have the first one when you're going to talk about covenants is you do have Bitcoin Core experts, you do have Lightning experts, but there is like communication silo in the sense of people who understand Bitcoin scripts, consensus rules, and understand why is the second layers like Lightning or coin swaps or vaults and how it works. The intersection of set of people, there's like maybe 10 people in the world who have like experience with base layers and second layers. But that means like, when people are going to talk about CTV, it's like people understand the script parts, but they might not understand like the implication part for the second layers. And same if you take the conversation user sense. People know to understand second layers, but they might not be understand the cost on full node resource, like, bandwidth, signature, resource usage, all that kind of things that you're going to care from the perspective of Bitcoin Core. So first, one of the first goal was trying to bridge, like the communication silos between second layers and base layers developers. And second part is like, you have people who are going to work on an code in his corner. You have another developers in the part of the world who is going to work in his basement on another opcodes, but they're never going to talk.
This is why we did our whole conference up next, because it was like, I was like, these people don't talk to each other. And I thought everyone talked to each other. Like before all this, like me looking at the inside, I was like, oh yeah, the core devs got it. I trust them. And I do trust, Bitcoin developers corporately, but like I did not realize how fractured the communication is. And I think this is I'm not really sure how to reflect on this. I'm still kind of processing it because I think the average pleb goes, the devs got it. But the past month, we saw the average pleb totally break somehow and be like, the devs don't have it. They're trying to sabotage Bitcoin. What happened? And I think this really stems from just a lot of the Bitcoin, you Bitcoin devs hang out on our IRC a lot, and you don't come on podcasts and talk to the weird MicroStrategy moon boys enough, so they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, also too, like I just want to harp on your point again, where it's true that usually like Bitcoin developers don't really talk to a whole lot of Lightning developers, at least on a day-to-day basis. It really is their own ecosystems, and there's pluses and minuses to that. But I don't know if the average pleb understands that either. Is that look like Lightning is a whole different world than base chain, and NVK will say it all the time. Like he's only caveman on chain. Like that's all he cares about. But obviously, there is this whole other branch, and when we're talking about soft forks and opcodes that affect both layers, like CTV, it really is difficult to kind of get everybody in the room. So I'm definitely thankful for conferences like OpNext to hopefully get some of these layer 1 and layer 2 people in the conversation when it comes to upgrades and soft forks.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, there is a fragmentation of communication space. It's unsuspected. It's as far as you have not put your own feet into it, you cannot believe as much as like, yes, there is it's not a complete failure, but and when you're saying like, Bitcoin developers are trying to sabotage, are not trying to sabotage, but there is there's a lack of common space of communications where people from different perspectives can exchange their viewpoints and doing with not in a conflictual way, but with a real dialogues where you take times to listen to everyone's viewpoints and you try to understand why. It's easy to be Bitcoin Core developers and to be condescendent or like conceits towards like, I don't know, someone with a use case or an exchange trying to do that. But it's you want Bitcoin to be used in the real world. And for that, you need people building apps or like building business or like building a exchange, on-ramp, off-ramp. So trying to sometimes like put in the shoes of someone else, it's never be done by Bitcoin core developers. And it's hard. Like maintaining Bitcoin cores hard. You have GCC, which is upgrading. We changed the build system last year. There is always a library to fix. There is dependency to take care about. There is RPC to refine. Yes, so it's plebs should also understand that most of the Bitcoin developers I know are very talented peoples. Who are multi skills, but
multi-talented. They have many domains.
Multifaceted.
Yeah, multifaceted. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like it's going on podcast, going into the medias, going to conference. It starts to be a different job. A sense of it's more like evangelist kind of jobs, communication style of jobs, and it's public relationship kind of stuff.
Udi, I don't know. This might be a toxic person to bring up, but Udi Wertimer I had on this podcast. He said Core should start making TikTok videos. And I was like, honestly.
I do. There is a part of I agree and I disagree with him. I disagree with him because I do think the medium you pick up has an impact on the message, and that's something that has been well studied in sociology of medias. But yes, when you go on TikTok, it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds of span of attentions. Going to explain a hard mathematical or cryptographic problem on TikTok, it doesn't fit, right? But Mike's or like Lightning is a lot of economics. Lightning is a lot about fees, like doing the maths, like off-chain, on-chains, topology and graph theory. Do you see explaining that on TikTok? And my opinion is like I do believe like Bitcoin is a scientific project. At first in the sense of it works, and we have all some kind of faith in Bitcoin because mathematics are the same. It's the same for me, like in Vegas, Miami, Hong Kong, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, every part of the world, we're using the same mathematics. And that means we can use Bitcoin, or like we can build things. When you start to be like on TikTok or Twitter, or like, that's why I'm not on Twitter. I think it's a disaster. Like you can always get things wrong because the medium is like, if you're scientific and engineer first, your medium of expression is a whiteboard. It's long text, mainly sparse, is like white paper. It's a kind of literature, like to convey complex technical ideas. So somehow we have to find like some kind of medium ground, but
maybe we need all the out of work Bitcoin podcasters to specialize in like summarizing like Greg Maxwell Reddit posts or Bitcoin mailing lists. Like
that's why the work that Uptake people have done, that's Mike Schmidt and David Harding have done. I think it's very valuable. We need more David Harding. That's Greg Murray Maxwell in this space, in the sense of people who can understand very deep technical content and try to vulgarize it, we say in English. Or like
describe it in more detail.
Distill, decipher.
But we need technical historians.
Yeah.
We need more technical evangelists, but it's start to be a different job than like writing good C++ work or testing low-level C works or like doing cryptographic kind of research.
Such a good point that, so much work of developers just is so far opposite of any type of media. Anything to do with media, anything to do with advertising, anything to do with even just like conveying topics in a simplistic manner. It doesn't. It's even that itself is almost just not a thing that normally developers do. They have, just like lawyers, they always speak in lawyer speak because they have to, because everything is so exact. Same with software developers. Thing won't compile if this one character is incorrect. So they have to speak very precisely as well. And so I guess I think that the conclusion will be really is that podcast is going to be the medium. That is the only kind of chance that we have at having some kind of long form discussion from the regular person to a developer. That's going to probably be their only main connection, because I just don't see regular people going and reading all of the amazing work that developers do. I see them as pretty much probably only listening to them on a podcast.
I don't think things should be seen statically, because you might hear first on the podcast or on a conference about like the great consensus cleanup or like cluster mempool, and you might get more curious. You must start to read about C++ book code, to read C++ code by yourself, or you must start to dig into like more advanced resource. It should be a path, or and ideally more we do have like Bitcoin hobbyists or like Bitcoin plebs, like passionate and like running their own full nodes, following consensus change. More secure Bitcoin is, in the sense of harder Bitcoin is to change, and more Bitcoin is stable. So, in my perspective, like education matters in the sense of trying to level up people, and we have seen this with Return, but the last
I think that's the good work that the Optech people do with their podcast and with their information. Like the information, the technical information is being put out there by the thankless work, like people like Optech and a lot of podcasters and stuff. Like Charles, but it's that's going to be the medium that the average pleb is going to learn.
Our thought with this content and Blockspace media is more. We're trying to speak more to the institutional folks. Maybe not like the people doing the corporate treasury, but if they had an internal technical person who's like, I'm going to stay on top of like what's going on in Bitcoin, and they can't sit and like read everything on the mailing list, but if they can like tune in to like our content, read our newsletter, read our writing, stuff like that.
That's where this threshold happens, which is interesting because it's like once you get above a certain threshold, then you're just going to read all this Michael Saylor stuff and the business. That's what you're saying. Those people will never usually partake in the technical discussion, so you almost can't even really target those people.
Well, as we saw with Bitcoin Mechanic, most people just take their opinion from a token person they consider to be technical.
A podcaster.
So, when the podcasters become distorted in their views of how Bitcoin works, then that can create massive.
That's why we have lots of podcasts.
Yeah.
They can hopefully cross-pollinate
there is
ideas.
like doing more TikTok or like Twitter storm or that kind of stuff. There is a risk of race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, and like you start to get into like more emotional arguments where Bitcoin is monetary usage and it should stay the same. Satoshi has said
it's a super time traveling battery that whatever.
That's why this long form content is what I really appreciate from podcasters. Because Twitter is going to be a shitstorm.
Yeah, and my impression is the last opportunity, like. It has get on Twitter and like Bitcoin developer have tried to do analogy, but they're doing bad analogy instead of like, in my opinion, like if you want to level up the conversations, you're going to come with numbers like quantitative measurements.
Well, I've seen even you start to put out a couple of troll posts just because like not fully troll, but just because people like at this point that's almost what they only respond to. Like they don't respond to the actual information, the good information that people like yourself put out, the actual statistics. They're like, no, show us a troll post dunking on somebody like on the opposite side. That's all Twitter.
So you're on Twitter. It's easy just to send a tweet, right? So when you have to write a long text, it takes you 1 or 2 hours. You have to think about what you say, and so it's leveling up the conversation.
Okay, I love this, but my Twitter follower count is going up right now, so I like the platform. Okay. I'm joking. So I'm a huge fan. I've been really nailing the engagement lately.
We're just talking about technical discussions.
Yeah. I know. Well, I want to wrap this up. But I invite you, Antoine. I like to ask people, especially the people who spend a lot of their time in like the technical weeds, zoom really far back out. Take yourself out of the technical discourse, out of the math and science. What do you hope Bitcoin looks like in 20 to 50 years?
I hope it's still around. I mean, it's that's like I was there. I was already in Bitcoin and working on Bitcoin developments when we got the inflation bug. And I'm like not just nuts going up on things like that. And I could say like inflation bugs, but it might be like network kind of synchronization issues or like problem with the DB or like we take too often like Bitcoin stability and robustness for granted. And it's a lot of work just to get things running. I'm not even talking about doing soft work. I'm not doing changing policy rules, just getting things running release after release.
Thank you so much for coming on the pod, Antoine. I know you don't do many of these, and I really appreciate this. Very valuable to me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I assume I will see you off and on in the Bitcoin Tech Beat. So yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
And Vortex, thank you.